You think if you turn your house into a fortress, people will stay away. You reinforce the front door, board up the windows, stack sandbags all around, and string razor wire along the fence. You think that makes you safe, but in reality, you may have made a fatal mistake. A lot of the time, the more your doors and windows look like something out of a war movie, the more you're telling everyone on your street. There is good stuff in this house, and there is a lot of it. Real smart fortification is not making sure everyone can see you're prepared. It is making sure no one can tell you already are. In this video, I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes ordinary people make. Your home should feel like a quiet base, not a loud prison. When most people think about home defense, they picture pretty much the same thing upgraded: security doors, steel bars on the windows, sandbags by the entrance, razor wire on the fence, cameras everywhere, and blinding motion lights in the yard. Once all that is in place, people feel a strong sense of security. But most of the time, that feeling is only for you, because from the outside, that doesn't look like security. It looks like advertising. And the ad says, this family has resources. This family has supplies. This family prepared before everyone else. There must be something worth taking inside, especially when things are tense, when the power is out, when the water is off, when supplies are low, or when crime is clearly getting worse. People stop thinking with logic and start thinking with instinct. Instinct sees an ordinary house and may not bother with it, but instinct sees a house that is obviously fortified. And the first reaction usually isn't retreat. It is that there must be something valuable in there. So here is the first rule, and you need to remember it. Good defense doesn't look powerful. Good defense looks normal. The best fortification from the street should look like nothing happened. It should look like a random Tuesday. Now, let's get into the most practical part. A lot of people think the most important thing is buying a more expensive lock, but the real problem usually isn't the lock. It is the door frame. In a lot of forced entries, the lock never actually fails. The frame does. Your deadbolt is usually attached to a small strike plate, and that plate is often held in place by a few short screws driven into weak trim wood near the frame. So what happens is this: the lock is still locked, but one hard kick hits the door. The wood splits, the screws rip loose, and the whole door swings open with the lock still engaged. The lock didn't fail. The structure holding it did. That is what makes this so counterintuitive. A lot of people spend real money upgrading the lock, but the thing that actually decides whether your door survives, the first kick, is often those tiny screws no one pays attention to. The simplest fix is to replace the short factory screws. Swap out the screws in the hinges and the strike plate for much longer screws, ideally long enough to bite into the wall stud behind the trim. Once you do that, the force from a kick is no longer hitting one weak decorative section. Now, it gets transferred into the structural frame of the wall. From the outside, you can barely see a difference, but the physics of the door have completely changed. If you want to go one step further, install a real crossbar that anchors into the structure. And I do not mean one of those little temporary door props or some plastic gadget from a store that looks intimidating. I mean an actual metal bar that spans the full width of the door, with both ends seated into reinforced mounting points on either side of the frame. The moment that bar drops into place, that door stops being just a door. It becomes a wall with a handle on it. That change matters, because when someone kicks a normal door, what they're really doing is exploiting a weak frame. They're not fighting the whole house. But once that force gets routed into the structure, they're no longer kicking a door. They're fighting the building. And a lot of people miss one important fact. Most intruders are not movie villains running a professional breach team. They are not there for a long battle. They want speed. Get in fast. Grab fast. Get out fast. A lot of break-ins last only a few minutes, maybe up to 10. If one door forces them to make noise, keep exposing themselves, and make zero progress, there is a very good chance they give up. Because at that point, they're not working on a target anymore. They're creating a bigger and bigger problem for themselves. This matters even more for ordinary people, especially for older people, women, people living alone, people with limited mobility, or anyone who is not going to react fast in the middle of the night. You do not need to sprint to the front door and try to outreact the situation. You do not need to stand there and physically hold the line. What you need is a structure that is already working for you. So when something actually happens, your whole job becomes one motion. Drop the bar, step back, sit down, wait. Let the building take the first hit for you. That is the kind of home defense ordinary people can actually use. Now, let's talk about windows. A lot of people have a heavy front door, but do almost nothing with the windows. And in real life, a lot of entry attempts start with a first floor window. The problem with windows is that people underestimate them. Most people think if someone breaks a window, the noise will be so loud, no one would try it. But standard glass is far more fragile than most people realize. An untreated window can shatter, and once it does, someone can clear the broken glass fast and open up a hole large enough to reach through or even climb through. So a lot of people's first reaction is this: fine, I'll put bars on the windows. And yes, bars work, but the problem is they are obvious. The moment you weld bars across every first floor window, you're no longer just protecting the house. You're sending a message, and that message is there is something inside valuable enough to cage. Just like before, defense that is too loud can become attraction. A lower profile option is security film. It goes on the inside of the glass, and from the outside, most people will never notice it is there. When everything is normal, it looks like nothing. But the second the glass gets hit, that film holds the shattered pieces together. The window may crack spiderweb or even be ruined completely, but it does not instantly clear out. And that difference is huge, because a lot of the time your job is not to make entry physically impossible forever. Your job is to slow it down. 30 extra seconds, 1 extra minute, 2 extra minutes. That means more noise, more exposure, more frustration, more hesitation. A lot of impulsive intrusions are not decided by who is stronger. They're decided by who becomes too much trouble first. Raise the cost high enough, and a lot of bad situations never continue. Now, here is another trap people walk into. A lot of people think more alarm stickers, more motion lights, and more internet-connected security systems automatically mean more safety. In normal times, maybe they help, but during a long blackout, regional unrest, or a serious breakdown in normal services, those same things can start working against you. If your front door is covered in branding from some high-end security company, people are not just seeing deterrence, they're seeing budget. They're seeing someone willing to spend money. They're seeing a house that probably has something worth protecting. Same thing with motion lights. If the whole street is dark and your house lights up every time someone gets close, you are not just detecting movement. You are announcing this house still has power. In normal times, that looks modern. In abnormal times, that can turn into a beacon. So real home security is not just about blocking entry. It is also about controlling what your house says about you. Because one thing a lot of people forget is that houses talk, not with words, with signals. The cardboard boxes in your recycling talk. The steady stream of deliveries to your front porch talks. The generator roaring through a blackout talks. The same light turning on at the same time every night talks. Even the smell of hot food coming from your kitchen talks. Most of the time, nobody notices these things. But under stress, every one of them can become information. Desperate people observe fast. They connect patterns fast. And they make decisions fast. The generator is one of the biggest mistakes people make. The second a portable generator starts running, it becomes obvious in a quiet neighborhood. In the daytime, it is noticeable. At night, it is practically a broadcast. You're basically telling everyone nearby, I have fuel, I have electricity, my fridge is running, my phones are charged, my house is not in the same situation as yours. And when resources are tight, being different from everyone else is often not a good thing. So if you're really going to prepare, your thinking needs to shift. If you can rely more on quiet battery storage, do that. Instead of letting a generator advertise your presence for hours, charge slowly with solar during the day if possible. Keep nighttime electrical signatures low. Run big loads in short concentrated windows. And if you absolutely must use a gas generator, do it when the surrounding environment is already noisy. Your goal is not to show that you're the one house still functioning. Your goal is to make everyone think you're in the same boat they are. That is what blending in means. Not hiding like a spy, just not standing out. Those two things are very different. Hiding makes people think you have something. Ordinary makes people think you're not worth the effort. Now, let's get into another major mistake. A lot of people do home defense by making everything bigger, heavier, higher, and more aggressive. Taller walls, heavier doors, more locks, nastier fences. That approach is not completely wrong, but it is single-layer thinking. And the biggest weakness of single-layer thinking is that once that one layer fails, everything behind it is suddenly exposed. Real home defense is not about building one magical wall that never falls. It is about creating several layers of trouble. Each layer doesn't have to be unbeatable. It just has to buy time, create discomfort, and force another decision. The first layer can start somewhere that doesn't even look defensive. Your landscaping. If the area under your first floor windows is bare and open, that space becomes a natural path. But if you plant dense, thorny shrubs there, holly, barberry, hawthorn, things like that, the whole equation changes. In daylight, it just looks like landscaping. At night, when someone tries to move close to the wall and approach that window, it is a different story. It scratches hands, snags clothes, hooks pant legs, slows movement, and creates frustration. And most importantly, it doesn't look tactical at all. Nobody looks at a hedge and thinks this house is defending itself against me, but it absolutely raises the cost of getting close. That is one of the best things about low-profile defense. A lot of the most effective protection still looks like normal life. The second layer is the hardening of doors and windows. The third layer is where you position yourself inside the house. And this part matters a lot. A lot of people imagine defense as hearing a sound and rushing out to investigate. That impulse can be incredibly dangerous, especially at night. When you've just been jolted awake, your heart is pounding, your body isn't fully online, your attention is narrow, and your judgment is not at its best. That is exactly when people make the mistake of putting themselves in the worst possible position. People with real training know clearing a house is high risk. It is not something you safely do just because you grabbed a flashlight and worked up some courage, because you never know what is around the corner, what is behind the door, what is inside the shadows. And the second you start moving through the house, you leave cover and walk into uncertainty. A better plan is not to go find the problem. It is to move yourself into a position you can control, like the bedroom. If the bedroom door is also reinforced, if it also has a bar, if it can also resist impact, then it stops being just the room where you sleep. It becomes your final shell. You move inside, lock it, drop the bar, get your light, keep your communication ready, keep any defensive tools within reach, and then get still. Remember this line: you are not guarding the door. The door is guarding you. Your job is not to charge out like an action hero. Your job is to let the other side burn energy. The longer they stay outside, the more noise they make. The more tired they get, the more likely they are to be noticed. And the more likely they are to decide it is not worth it, especially with impulsive offenders. They are looking for easy targets. And the moment they realize you are not easy, a lot of them will go find someone else. At this stage, there is another layer of protection that people do not like to admit is powerful. Neighbors. Yes. Not gadgets, not razor wire, not an expensive lock. Neighbors. The person who walks their dog early every morning. The person who gets home late from work. The one across the street who is always on the balcony. The one who looks out the window every time they hear something odd. These people are natural distributed observation points. You do not need some dramatic neighborhood militia. You do not need to turn your block into a war zone. You just need to do a few very normal things in advance. Say hello, learn names, exchange phone numbers, and say something simple. If you ever see something weird around my place, shoot me a message and I will do the same for you. That sounds ordinary. It may even sound trivial, but when something actually happens, that kind of relationship is often worth more than adding 2 more locks. Because no matter how solid your house is, the person inside still has to sleep. But if several households are watching out for each other, your house instantly becomes a harder target. And for most opportunistic intruders, that alone is enough to make them move on. Don't forget, a lot of break-ins are not master-planned operations. They're just someone looking for the easiest option. You do not not need to be the hardest house on the block. You just need to not be the easiest one. Now, at this point, a lot of people fall into one more trap. If you're preparing, does that mean you stay in the house no matter what? No. Real preparation always includes an exit plan. That part matters. Your home is a base, not a coffin. You need to decide ahead of time what conditions make staying no longer worth it. Fire, flooding, structural damage, a threat that is clearly escalating beyond what your layers can handle. Those decisions are best made while you're calm, not when the situation is already crashing into you. Because under stress, people tend to overestimate what they can handle, and they tend to wait too long. So draw your line in advance. If these conditions happen, I leave. Where do I go? How much fuel do I always keep in the vehicle? Where are the important documents? Who am I contacting? Where is the meetup point? What route do I take? And what is the backup if the main route is blocked? That is not weakness. That is part of the system. Real smart defense is not blindly staying no matter what. It is having both plans ready. The plan to stay and the plan to leave. You are not gambling on one outcome. You are giving yourself more than one exit. So let me make the whole idea simple again. For ordinary people, the biggest mistake in home fortification is usually not that they prepared too little. It is that they prepared too visibly, too loudly, too much like a public announcement. There is stuff in here. The most effective setup is usually the opposite. The door looks the same, but the frame is much stronger. The windows still look ordinary, but they are not easy to break through fast. No one outside can tell what you stored, how much power you have, or how many more days ahead you are than everyone else. Your neighbors think you're normal. People passing by think you're ordinary. And the only person who really tests the house finds out the hard way that this target is not as easy as it looked. And that is enough, because real life is not a game. The winner is not the one who stacks the highest defense stat. In real life, the advantage usually goes to the house. That draws less attention, reveals less, creates more hassle, and gets skipped. You do not want to become the strongest looking house on the street. You want to become the house that looks ordinary, but becomes a headache the second someone tries it. That is the most practical defensive mindset. For ordinary people, not loud fortification, not apocalypse theater, not turning your home into a movie prop, just quietly improving the critical points, one by one. So when something finally does happen, everyone else still sees an ordinary home. But you know, it is not a place that opens with one kick. If you want, there is one thing you can do tonight. Do not rush out and buy a more expensive lock. First, go look at the screws in your door frame. See how short they really are. After that, you may realize the door you always assumed was secure was only secure from a distance. And if you want, I can do a follow-up on this. After the power goes out, what are the exact little details that most easily reveal you still have supplies? Because a lot of people do not get discovered by force. They leak the answer themselves, one detail at a time. And you can start by telling me this. What part of your home makes you feel the least secure right now? The door, the windows, or that door frame you've probably never really looked at closely.